The way that I got into this was through a story that comes from the 2nd century, and it was told by Rabbi Hanina ben Teradian. He was asked, there was a Torah scroll burning, and he was asked what he saw. He said he saw the scroll was burning, but the letters were flying free. Somebody asked me, what do you see? How can you draw images of this? You know, knowing that I was an artist and that this was an emotional story. And so I went on the journey of trying to figure out what is it that was happening to the letters, and why did the scroll just not burn up, but the letters ascended to heaven? So this was my question. And my discovery was in thinking about it really seriously, because it was a serious question. I found out that the letters were made of light. Light was indestructible. It was returning to the heavens where it was part of the light. And this was a story that developed out of the question, what happened to the light? And then all of this work tells that story. The light went up to the heavens, and it was there from the beginning of time until what it is today that we see. Just as the festivals are built on a story or an assumption, this too is what drove mine. So a question to all of you to just put in your mind, what are some of the different types of light? We saw Jeff talk about firelight, we talked about candlelight, we talked about a lot of that light is generated, but there's also reflected light. We know the moon doesn't have its own light, it's reflected light. We have light that's generated and light that's reflected, and it comes from all sorts of different things. One of the things that I think of when I think of light that really was meaningful and special to me as an artist is the light that bounces off illuminated manuscripts. So when I think of illuminated letters, that was something that I wanted to bring into this project and to figure out where it would fit. As we go through the work, you'll see where those illuminated letters fit. But the letters that started on the Torah scroll are part of this story in an important way. So this is the journey of finding the light within those illuminated letters. What I started with was something that I call the guiding principles, and I came up with an image that composes and is something that people can meditate on as a guiding principles. It's a visual meditation. And it begins, this is the complete visual that contains everything that's a guiding principle to me. I came up with it. And we start here with the universal, eternal, and timeless. As Jeff pointed out, the universal is how we all deal with the darkness and trying to find the light at the time of darkness. It's been there through time and talks about the eternal, often in religious or spiritual ceremonies or festivals that talks about the eternal that's here and beyond us. So these are examples within the imagery of the project here where I have universal, eternal, and timeless visuals. So the heavens, light and darkness, the atmosphere, trees, the seasons, and geometry. And geometry in this work, I call it sacred geometry. There is a whole understanding of things that are called sacred geometry. They were shapes and balances and measurements that you found within churches, within structures, within artwork, because it related to that which was sacred, churches and such. I call this sacred geometry because it's speaking about the geometry and used for a spiritual purpose here. So this is the first piece of panels, the first ones there. You can see them across these visuals here. This is about the heavens, the light in the heavens. So again, it's a timeless, eternal, and universal. We all have a view of the heavens. This is my story. It's on a scroll. A scroll indicates that it's a story. Hebrew goes from right to left. So instead of reading it this way, it begins over here and extends in this direction. So this is the heavens. It also shows some of the geometry. This is what we're going to be talking about today, the very first piece, the very first image, which is about illuminate. So we're going to start on the right side with the scroll and go through each piece that deals with the illumination. This is the last piece in the set of imagery that I created. This is white, so dark, the dark scroll. This is the light scroll. This is a scroll of light, and it talks about scroll, Torah. Torah is a story. It's on a scroll, which is like a Torah, the Jewish book that's a scroll that's been read throughout time. Only instead of words, this Torah deals with the atmosphere and what we find in the atmosphere and the letters that are hidden in that atmosphere, the letters of light. Again, this will be the very beginning of what we're talking about, how the root, and I'll explain that, illuminate, the word illuminate shows up within these scrolls. This is the middle section of all the imagery. These are the trees. Trees are universal. We all have them. These are trees, 18 trees, that are found within the text of the Torah. So they were present a long time ago, and they're continuing through time to be present today and hopefully in the future. So there are 18 different types of trees, and they're mentioned in the text of the Torah. So this is one of the tree segments. This is the back side of the tree segments. I'll talk about those. And here are the first trees that deal with illuminate, with light, the first word. These are almond trees. The reason they were chosen to join with light is because they were the decoration on the menorah, the candelabra that was in the ancient temple in Jerusalem. So they had the trees themselves, the almond trees that were present when this was written about in the Torah, have a relationship to light, to illuminate, not only because of the candelabras, but because they were the decoration on the candelabra. This is the geometry of what I'm calling particles in the heavens. The geometry is a universal symbol. You don't have to speak anything but mathematics. It applies to all languages. People know math throughout, and they can communicate through math with that as their basic language. So these are the particles that are in the heavens. You can also see the lights, the letters of light in the heavens. There's some more particles in the heavens in the first panels. These are the particles that are like on the tree panels, like you see here. And these are the particles that are like behind me. So the particles are characters within this story. They flow from the beginning in the heavens, where the letters of light went up to the heavens and formed into particles, and then came down to earth and nourished the trees, went up into the trees, and then became part of the atmosphere. So again, we have the universal, eternal, and timeless as the first segment of this meditation, this guiding principles. The second piece is about language, and it begins with root, text, and context. So these were kind of concepts that came to me as to how to explain what drove me to create this work. So it begins with, this is all about the development of language. So I'm going to take this passage here in English, where you can see this highlighted word. It's right here on this panel. I'm going to read it. It says, "O soul of mine, bless Hashem." Hashem means the name, and it's another name for God. But in the text, it's pronounced this way. Hashem Ma'el, that's also how it's written there. "You are expanding in my awareness, clothed in glory and beauty, enveloped in a robe of light," there's our light, "and spreading the skies like a translucent talit." Talit is a prayer shawl. And I find that this is illuminate, that panel. Here's the talit, the prayer shawl, and the heavens. You know, when you look up in the heavens, it's like it's covering us with absolutely gorgeous stars and creating this beauty, this awe that's up there, full of light, that's been there for all time and is reaching us and our eyes and nourishing us. This is the understanding of development of language. I want you to understand, because Hebrew's not very commonly known to people, so I want to take you through the development of it. From symbols and shapes to letters. Language develops from symbols and shapes to letters. Here's a symbol, a universal. It can be understood. Square, me in front of the square, and colors. I could go anywhere and people would understand what that is, but it doesn't necessarily have more information than just what you see at the first glance. This is a painting by Keith Haring. Okay, it has more symbols in it, more specific symbols. People could understand that, but they couldn't necessarily understand a story, but they get something out of it because it's conveying, you know, animals and humans and a mermaid and me. But we came to this piece in the museum, and what it said to me was, there's information here, but I had no way to get into it and crack the code. This was the label on the wall. It said Korean scroll, pair of calligraphic hanging scrolls, but I had no idea, other than it probably was something very special because it was in a museum, but I had no way to break into the code. So this is about the development of Hebrew. How do you crack that code? Starting on this side, I'm going to get on the right side, excuse me. And language begins with images to convey information. A head, a person, you know, maybe a fork, a hand, an eye, and then letters developed a little bit further along the line, kind of looking more like the letters that we have today in Hebrew. The last three lines are block letters. These would appear in text. These are kind of block letters, and these are script letters for contemporary Hebrew. This is the letter that I want you to pay attention to. It's the letter that begins everything. This is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet that I was showing you on the right side. And now you have something to begin the process of breaking into the code. This is the letter Aleph. The alphabet is called Aleph Bet, and our alphabet is called, well, alphabet, obviously. A is what begins the process. Once you have one letter, you can begin to see it show up in various different places. So the letters in the heavens, the story was that there were letters in the heavens, and from those letters they gathered into groups of three. That's what's called a Hebrew root. It's called a shoresh. It's a root, and when you have one letter, unless you actually have the picture, it only means that one thing. But if you have a group of three letters, all of a sudden you have a concept that through the process of the development of this language, with prefixes and suffixes, that core concept can go to a number of different words. And I'll show you how that happens. So the roots form in groups of three. Sometimes in Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, there were 2 letters, but for this purposes, we're dealing with 3. And they can contain a concept, and the word here is shoresh, or root. Shoresh in Hebrew. For the purpose of the project, I began with this root. You saw it on the earlier slide. This is this letter. You can see it here. And 2 other letters. So on the first page here we have the letter names. This is an aleph, which you already know. The second letter is a vav, and the third letter is a resh. But all together, and this is how it looks in Hebrew, and this is how you would say it, or. And below that here, you have ways that it's been interpreted in the translations that were created with my study partners in a traditional way of studying. Rabbi Laurie Ruttenberg and Miles Hochstein, who's a poet, both of them know Hebrew back and forward. I'm kind of a beginner. I'm not quite a beginner, but they are more accomplished. But my drive was to create translations, which we'll go through a couple, that are more in relationship, a contemporary understanding, contemporary words, to what the imagery of the project is. So we have, I'll show you. So there are 18 shorashim going across. They read across in groups of 3. This is how I translated them in the beginning. So illuminate, wrestle, and connect. Those 3 are on the panel in the front room. They act as an invitation to the viewer, and they tell the viewer how to encounter life, to illuminate what it is your question is, what your problem is, what your vision is, to wrestle with it and ask questions, and then to connect with it and bring it into your being as part of you. The rest of the next 4 layers of roots, 3-letter roots, and these are superimposed over each root, have 1 core concept and then 2 supporting aspects of that concept. So the next concept would be love. The next concept would be justice, righteousness. Torah, the teaching, whatever that spiritual teaching is that you're following, and to remember that your condition, we as Jews, our history tells us what our condition was, that we came from slavery. That's what our story is in Passover. And that in creation, the 7th day was about the one having the opportunity to rest as if all the world belonged to the one, which it supposedly does. And we as humans have that opportunity to rest, which is totally at the other end of the spectrum of slavery. We have that choice. The last level is about commitment, and that is from the place where you are today through, this is the mitzvot, through the commandments, but I like to think of them as living with these values in your everyday life. You can become part of the covenant. Through how you live your life and practice these values on a daily basis, not just on Saturday or Sunday or a holiday. It's how you bring these values into your life that you become part of this history and have a vocabulary to transmit this on forward. So this again is illuminate, the very first appearance. And right here, if you can see, it's tiny, but it's on the panel up in the front. You see that first letter, the aleph. So now you have something to recognize and feel like you can connect with that. And the 2 other supporting letters, the vav and the resh. Again, here we go. Aleph, vav, and resh. And that's how it appears as a root. The words The roots form the core idea of what it is, and it can become a word by the potential of adding a prefix or a suffix. Prefix going before the word, suffix after. And here's the tree. This is the tree that's on the wall here. You can see in gold are the letters that you already know. So it's the Aleph, Vav, and Resh. But there are letters before and letters after. And sometimes there's a hidden letter in the middle where something has gone missing. Okay? Here are those letters again. You can see them a little bit more clearly. This is the order that they follow in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the root at the very bottom. That's a very special layout. It comes from Kabbalah, which is the mystical and spiritual aspect of Judaism. And this is called, the layout is called a tree of life. So a tree of life from Kabbalah is on a tree also. Okay? And here's how we've translated them. Again, this line here on the front shows that in the first line, there's light 2 times. It's been translated that way. In the second line, there's three times of light. And the third, it's orbs of light, and so on. So when these words, these individual words that are on this one tree to illuminate, show up in text, that's what I'm going to show you. Next is the tree, where it's reversed. The tree is in white, and the background is colored in blue, color of winter. Here we have the tree. And now, instead of just the individual words, we have lines. These are lines of text from the Torah. And here's how it looks without the tree behind it, so you can see that there are words in gold. Those are the words that come from this root. And there are words in silver, and those come from another tree, another root. And they kind of blend and fuse in together, have threads of connection between the trees. But this is hard to break into. It's not your language. So what are we going to do? Okay. Hebrew text with highlighted root words and biblical citations. And that's what you'll find in the book. But this is the first one. This is from Genesis, the very beginning. This is the third line of the Torah. And this is how it looks with its highlighted words. You can now see. You know that letter. You know the root. And you know that it means light. Light. So this is the translation that came out of the study group that I was part of. And this is how I had Miles write it as a poem.
And read those out loud.
This one is, Ha'el said light will be, and light there was. I'll give you another example from here. And this follows directly after. It's line 4 and 5 in Genesis. Here you have 1, 2, 3 times this root shows up, this root word shows up. And here's the translation, and here it is in its poetic form. So, Ha'el saw the light as good, and Ha'el cracked apart each from the other, the light and the dark, and Ha'el proclaimed the light to be day, and the dark to be night, and there came the evening, and there came the dawn, one day. So that's the beginning of the translations. In this booklet, you'll find up to the second tag are all of the translations having to do with the root or. And so you can look at that in a little bit, but I want to show you exactly where this comes from. This is what a Torah looks like when you see the text. We house this Torah for use for the community. And here we go. This is the first 3 columns It's a handwritten scroll. I don't know how old this one is, but the text is one that's been written over and over and over and translated into all the languages around the world. Each time it gets translated, it gets interpreted to be close to the vocabulary and the words that are being used at that time. So let me show you a little bit closer. You can see that in the first 3 columns, I don't know if you can see all of the highlights. What I did was I went in, it's not highlighted in the original, obviously, but to show you where these words show up, here, here, throughout, so that were you to see an open scroll, all of a sudden, you now have at least one letter that you can look for, and you can look for that root that we're just learning right now. Here it is a little closer. These are the two lines that we just read, okay? In the beginning, God created. Sound familiar? To most people it would, you know, because it's the beginning of the story of how things were created, not only within the Jewish culture, but it's used in a lot of other cultures, you know, spiritual practices, to tell the story of how creation happened. Also, I want you to notice just on this, this is a handwritten scroll. They're very special letters, and I don't know if you can quite see it, but above certain of the letters are crowns. So when I came to write these pieces, I developed a font of my own in my computer that also has the crowns and the same style as this writing is. It is an embellishment, and it's only on certain letters, but you know, it also tells a story of the importance of those letters, of those words, and it's decorative, and you know, it's a way of enhancing the meaning of what the text is and raising it to a spiritual level. Within Judaism, there are texts that would be illuminated, but usually not the Torah. Usually not the Torah. But this is a way of signifying how special these letters are and the opportunity to create those letters and write those letters. So the context of what these words is, you know, the words are ancient. They've been spoken throughout time, and I kind of feel like throughout the time from when they were conceived and written down in a scroll, certain of the lines have been repeated and repeated and repeated, and that spoke to me to say that there's extra meaning because there must be some wisdom that's in there that's worthwhile repeating. But to put it into contemporary poetic context was what we really wanted to do with this project of creating this text in this book. This, again, is the same prayer that I read earlier. This is how it appears here and here with its particles and the particles that are here, these gold particles. The idea of this, again, it doesn't say a translucent talit in the actual Hebrew. It would be translated else, you know, a different way. But because my imagery had that talit, I said, let's do that. So it makes it ours, our contemporary explanation. And it brings us to the completion of the first 2 layers of the visual meditation. So now we've gone through universal, eternal, and timeless, and root, text, and context. So the next layer of going through this visual meditation is finding the awe. Jeff spoke about some of the ceremonies and some of the festivals and the magical quality, the spiritual quality, and this is what these words take us to and present us with an opportunity to reach. So illuminate, Wrestle and Connect. It's about an invitation to use this as a way to approach life. Love, justice, righteousness, Torah, the teaching, and remember are the values and ways of living. And place, mitzvot, and covenant are about our commitment to living in these values and bringing them into our lives. Here you see those values in a circular way, indicating that they're unending. They're unending on a day-to-day basis, on a transmission of life to life, forward and backward throughout time. And again, here's our letter that we know. What's the name of this letter? You've got to start. It's great. You're breaking the code. And here it is all together again. So it was an image that I came up with on my own. It contains all the things that guided me through all of the work. And I think it says something to people about how to approach life and this work and a way to go through this work in a number of different levels and visits. This is where we've been. Illuminate. These are all of the images that deal with the root Aleph, Vav, Resh, illuminate, as we go straight down. This is all of the first panels that are here in the studio. So the one that's in the front room, the one that's here, this one is missing. We don't have another wall for it. And this is the last piece. Next time, we have more salons booked. Next month, we have Wrestle. It's about names and naming. So understanding that through the wrestling that you do with this information, these challenges you have in life, you gain a name. Just like, who was it? Jacob wrestled with the angel, and his name was changed. Abraham and Sarah had their names changed at the very beginning. And we as individuals, whether you know it or not, through the life that you choose and how you live it, can have a name. It could be unknown to you, but through the challenges that you live through and overcome, it gives you a name, whether you claim it or whether you don't. It's all part of who you are and who your story is. And the last one, our guest here, will be Carol Schultz. It's about connecting with the one. It's about that moment in life, those moments in your lives, the peak moments where you've touched that magical thing, where you've released all it is that you have and are supported by whatever it is you're putting out into the earth, into the world, into time. You know, whether it's dance, Carol's a dancer, and she'll talk about her experience on the stage and when you're just dancing your heart out, I imagine. You know, so those are the topics.
And Russell is
Tsungani, Smitty, from the Lelushka clan up in Washington, area Washington. Smitty will come and talk about the giving of names. Thank you, Mara, for reminding me to. He is now. He is now. Yeah. If I could leave you with one set of words, as opposed to the images, this would be what I would want to send you off with. So this is Hebrew. You're not going to understand it. You may see some letters that you recognize, but everywhere there's gold has to do with a word that comes from one of the 18 roots. Okay? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Meant a lot to me that there were 5 words in there that came from the roots. This is it's not from the Torah, it's from books that came after, the wisdom of our fathers, the teachings of our fathers. And this is what it says. So where there's gold are those different roots. And where there's italic is the commentary that my study partners and I came up with to make it contemporary for us to understand today. And it goes like this. Shimon, the tzaddik of righteousness and justice, a tzaddik is a righteous person, was among the last of the great assembly. And he would say that the world stands on 3 illuminated words. On the radiant Torah teaching, to learn, to teach, to delve, and to grow wise. On the service, to connect the below to the above, the within to the beyond, the limited to the limitless, and the finite to the infinite. And on acts of devoted loving kindness, to give without desire for repayment, whether with money or with deeds, whether to the poor or to the rich, and whether to the living or the dead, but above all, to the dead, for they can never repay. So if I could leave you with something that this work and this experience signifies, I would say it's about how we live, and here are 3 simple ways of accomplishing that in a way that helps to make the world a better place. Thank you.